Hello and welcome to the third episode now of the Students of the Game Football podcast. I'm George Pitches and I'm joined as always by Max Marler. How are you doing, Max?
I'm very well, George. How are you?
I'm good. Have there been any exciting developments in the Marler household? I asked you this last time and I can probably predict the answer again, but I'd be interested to know if anything's changed this week.
Well, I bought some shorts. That was the highlight
You
of my
did.
week.
Well, those shorts, didn't they inspire Eric Lamela to score a Rabona goal yesterday?
It's definitely possible. I think it's the only explanation. So I bought on Thursday. I was just on a vintage like football shirts website.
Yeah.
I saw this Asterisk Tripolis. That's nice. I've heard that name somewhere. I remember thinking, I remember thinking that sounds like a team Spurs have played at some point in the last 10 years. And obviously now we know that was the game that Lamela scored that Rabona. Then, I'm watching the game yesterday, and what happens? Lamela scores a Rabona.
Were you wearing the shorts?
They arrived today, so they're in transit at this point. So, even whilst it's happening, I had some uncertainty about actually bought the shorts of Asterisk Tripolis. And it came, and I was like, "Wow, what have I done?"
I'm sure he'll thank you and your credit card for facilitating.
Well, he probably won't
that
thank
goal.
me.
Well, no, because maybe the bad omens are there as much as the good ones. Looking at his performance. So we're going to save the Champions League stuff if you were expecting any of that. Probably from the title, you can tell that's not what we're talking about. But we were going to do a little Champions League review this week, and we thought, why do it and then have to do another one next week when we could just dedicate all of our precious time next week to discussing the Champions League. So that's what we're going to do. So make sure you tune in for a massive UCL roundup of all of the round of 16 next week. Before we get on to anything more substantial today, have you heard of Football Index? And I will preface this by saying this is not a sponsorship, by the way.
I think that'd be a great sponsorship for us. I think they're looking for new sponsors. I've heard.
They are at the moment, certainly.
They've had a few issues, but on the rise again.
I thought I'd bring it up anyway, and we had a brief discussion about this before we started the pod. But for those of you that don't know, Football Index is, or I suppose was at the moment, it still exists, but it's a shadow of its.
Is it in administration now?
It's just gone into administration, yeah. And it was basically an online stock market that users could buy and trade shares in football players rather than in companies. And if a player performed well in real life, you'd get a dividend payment, which would make their price increase. You could then sell your shares in a player for a return on your investment, yada, yada. But anyway, I did this rather stupidly, looking back now. I had some savings built up that I thought, why not invest rather than leave to Santander to cater for me? And only £25, luckily, I put in rather than anything more, because it is just a big scam, really, isn't it? Or at least it has been recently. It's been found out to be such.
I mean, I thought the whole point in this podcast we might build some credibility, and that's now gone. That's completely out the window.
It's dead in the water.
No comment from me.
No comment. That's fine. I just thought it was quite sad, really, because essentially they scrapped the dividend payment, and that essentially means that what is the value of a player playing well when they're not having any kind of financial reward for doing so. So the market crashed, and a lot of people lost their money, myself included, of course.
I don't think people appreciate how bizarre this whole thing is. Like, this is such a weird thing, a stock market based on football players.
It is essentially.
No one really stopped to think, hang on a minute, this is one hell of a bubble and it's gonna burst. You can't have a stock market based on footballers.
Because of course
it is madness.
There's no real intrinsic value there, is there? Like,
no,
they're not a company performing well over an extended period of time. It's just a player, weirdly. But I got caught up in the fairy tale of it anyway, and then luckily I think I jumped on as the ship was sinking rather than having all of my possessions on board the ship as it went down. But yes, anyway,
you went down with everyone though, at least.
I went down with everyone at least. So I have some.
It was quite the party.
It was. But enough about Football Index. What have we got lined up for today? What are we going to be discussing over the next 30 to 40 minutes, I'd say?
So we've gone for two big, interesting topics, Juventus and Lille. Two very different clubs, two very different discussions, hopefully. So, yeah, let's find out.
We are, certainly. We're looking at Juventus and more specifically what's going wrong with Juventus at the moment. And it's a bit of a loaded question, to be fair. Because there is obviously quite a lot of things going wrong, which we'll discuss, but they're perhaps not having as rough a time as they're being made out to have. And then a little look at Lille, because they're current Ligue 1 leaders, and there's just a lot of interesting things to say, but we'll get on to them later on. So Juventus, then, it's quite a strange time to bring up a topic like this, isn't it? After their performance last night, they won 3-1 away, I believe, to Cagliari, inspired by a Ronaldo perfect hat trick. It's a left foot, right foot header, for those that don't know. That's his 57th hat trick of his career. That's quite astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do recall once that Pauli scored like 9 goals in a game. So
it's child's play for him.
It hasn't done that.
No.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, even though they have won a game yesterday, they're still in some level of trouble at the moment. They're currently third. If they win their game in hand, they'll leapfrog AC Milan into second. But at the moment, they're still 10 points behind Internazionale with only 12 games to go. Ronaldo is their top goal scorer on 23 goals. 5 of them are penalties. We're going to talk a little bit about their reliance on Ronaldo as the pod progresses. But where to start? I think the best place to start is with the man at the top of the helm, Andrea Pirlo, and a very stylish man, but a man who's perhaps not enjoying the fruits of his labours quite as much as he would have wanted a few months ago. So Maurizio Sarri, in charge last season, left rather unceremoniously with a Coppa Italia loss in the final to his old team Napoli and a UCL round of 16 loss to Lyon. Pirlo then took control, after only 9 days of being in charge of the under-23s. So do you think the plan with Pirlo was to perhaps ease him into the first team role over a number of years, maybe 2 years, in charge of the under-23s before giving him the job overall?
I mean, I think to an extent it was premeditated. Do I think he was the number one? I think they put him in there. It's like, if we don't get whoever we did want at the time. I think there was sort of rumoured to be going for Guardiola. I don't think it was ever going to happen. But I think they sort of expected Pirlo to be the man they'd have to bring in. But if there wasn't a chance we could get someone, like Pochettino or Guardiola, will do that without any hesitation. And now they're sort of on the Pirlo train. And they're very invested because they've, got no other option rather than to just bomb forward.
Well, it's a good-looking train.
It is a very good-looking train. Unlike Conte, his hair is 100% real. So respect that.
The train's plumes are flowing far. But I don't know. I'm going with his hair analogy.
Yeah, no, just romanticising Pirlo.
We are, because he's he has the reputation, I'd imagine, of being a very romantic man. But yeah, it's a difficult train to get off now. You're right, because they have invested quite a lot of stock into Pirlo and into the way that Pirlo wants to play. He had a thesis, didn't he, that we're going to talk about briefly. That luckily he sort of published a few weeks before going into management about how he wants to play football. And this is something you don't get with a lot of managerial appointments. You can understand by looking at what the players are doing on the pitch, what they're wanting to achieve, but you can't really get inside their head and know that for sure. But with Pirlo, of course, he put it all into paper for anyone to read. So you know exactly the sort of things that he's trying to do. So can you tell me a little bit from what you understand of that thesis and the sort of things that it had included in it? Primarily his influences, probably.
So disclaimer, we haven't actually, read it from start to finish.
You're not supposed to know that.
Okay, well, George read a bit of a breakdown, and I've sort of heard comments about it. I mean, reality is, with how things have gone on the pitch for Juventus, I don't think anyone's going to be exactly rushing to steal it from him or whatever he's doing. No. And so we've noted quite a lot of names which were in this or reference in this thesis. So Cruyff, Guardiola, Van Gaal, Ancelotti, Conte. That's a lot of people, is it not?
Yeah, it is. It is. And a lot of people with quite contrasting beliefs on the way that football should be played, I think. So to cite all of them as saying that this is my influence, perhaps is not starting at quite the standpoint that he would have wanted, that his employers would have wanted.
So it seems very similar to our situation. So if we're doing a piece of work for university and you're thinking, I've got to look really impressive here, so I'm going to I put all the academics I know, literally every single one of them, and you get the thing back. Says, you just put way too many people in there. It makes no sense whatsoever.
It
That's
doesn't.
what I imagine. I imagine Pirlo's thesis is similar to my university work. I think.
Yeah.
And no, we're doing very well. So
that's a lovely parallel. But it's almost like he's just pointing to spinning a globe with football managers' names on, and then pressing it to stop and thinking, "Oh, well, he sounds good. I'll go with him."
I mean, things I can't stop thinking. I would do exactly the same.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
I love him. I love him. I love him too. Oh, they're all so lovely. They're all going to be mine. He just has. Because I can't really work out what his sort of philosophy is. I think he wants to play football that's as stylish as the man himself.
Yeah.
But he also wants to win games.
And that's the old adage, isn't it? Is the battle between playing nice, attractive football and getting results. It's a bit more nuanced, I think. Sorry, I completely cut you off then. And I love hearing about cool things. So
I was definitely going in the wrong direction.
I'm trying to steer the ship at this early stage back on course. Yeah, it's a bit more nuanced than I think we're perhaps giving him credit for. He talks about wanting a total and collective style. And there was an excellent video on Tifo Football that talked about how he sets his Juventus side up, and there is a focus on quick interchanges and fluidity as well, which isn't dissimilar to what Maurizio Sarri likes to deploy, his famous Sarri ball.
I mean, these terms are still very vague.
They are vague.
They're nice words again. They're
Fluidity.
stylish words. Yeah, I was like, if you ask someone to explain each of these words, two different managers have very different subjective opinions of what those words mean to how they set up their team. I think that's probably sort of like videos which sort of try and explain this, is that there's a subjective nature to management, and that's what Pirlo's got to get right. He's got to get his own thoughts about what these words mean, and he's got to really implement them in a way that wins Juventus the sort of games which they should be winning.
And presumably, when you make an analysis video that using open terms like interchanging and fluidity, you're almost putting your own understanding of those terms into your video and not necessarily grasping the initial want from doing it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think Tifo are trying to give Pirlo tips. They're just trying to help the average people like ourselves understand what's going on in his mind. And to be fair, they do quite a good job. So well done, Tifo.
There you go. Still not sponsored, unfortunately. So there was somewhat of a sort of systemic move, I suppose, from what Sarri was trying to do, systematic, I should say, from what Sarri was trying to do to what Pirlo was trying to do. The problem is, I think, with the initial implementation of Pirlo's system is that, as you say, they didn't turn enough of those games they should have been winning into victories, which I suppose is the first rule of football management. But they won 5 of their opening 8 fixtures. And so under his tutelage, it was quite a just sort of lethargic start. But since the new year, they've played 20, they've won 15 of those, and then they have 2 draws and 3 losses as well. So do you think it perhaps is taking time for his system to be implemented, and it's just taken this many months for him to accurately describe what fluidity means? Or do you think that he might have tweaked things since, and there have been changes that lead to better performances on the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think there's no reason why he won't keep getting better and better. It's just the problem is, will he get better in time to meet the standards set by Juventus? The problem is when you've won. So the last time they didn't win the league was 2011. So
yeah,
if you've had that success after success after success, the willingness of even most loyal fans to give the next manager time will be, but they won't. It's difficult to explain to a fan after you just won 9 in a row. We need to just, we're gonna have to sit
trust
back
the process.
2 years, 3 years before we can go and win another 9 again. In their minds, they're just thinking this can just keep going on forever and ever. And I think you've got to. I don't like to give Agnelli credit because I don't like him, but I quite admire, the thought process and thinking. I don't think Agnelli at the minute is in any mind to give Pirlo a sack. I don't think that's possible. For a start, I don't think there's anyone on the job market that would actually, appeal to him. So I think they're going to stick with him and hope they'll give him the end of this season, hopefully next season as well, to sort of make his thesis most important ideas more apparent to us all.
Yeah, and easily digestible to the onlooker. You talked briefly about Agnelli. For those of you that don't know, that are listening, could you explain a bit about him and your feelings about him, perhaps? Because I know that they're quite extreme.
So you may have come across his name when you're hearing other terms like the European Super League. He's been very vocal in his support, and him and Florentino Perez are very the Bezzy mates. You know, they're always plotting together to see what they can do to sort of disrupt the harmony of football. And obviously their big idea is the European Super League, which essentially will just cut out any team which doesn't have the status or the money of teams like Juventus and pretty much like the top six in England and Spain, Germany and whatever. Yeah. So I don't really like him. To be honest, his European Super League idea is just his argument previously was that piracy is what's killing football, but the reality is that people like him are what kills football. He has no.
I love it.
He has no understanding of how football pyramids work. He's clearly just wants to make a closed system very similar to the American system, and that will kill football.
It will. I don't know of any sort of, for want of a better phrase, casual fan that is even on board remotely with this kind of idea. It's like this perverse kind of situation where 99% of those who have a vested interest in something have zero sort of say in whether that thing will happen, and they're actively opposing it. So no, I share your views on him. I think it's he's just has his priorities completely removed from the fans. But he's not a stranger to making a statement that will backfire, is he? Really, in terms of calling out clubs only to then fall foul to them.
Yeah. So he teams like Ajax and Porto, unsurprisingly, would not have been a part of his European Super League ideas. Yeah. So 2 years in a row, and Lyon, of course, as well. So Lyon, Porto, and Ajax all knock Juventus out in a row. I think I love that. What a statement!
It's poetry, isn't it?
As well. I just love it every time they lose, and they just the camera pans to him in the stands, just like looking really smug, like some sort of villain. And it warms my soul watching him so miserable.
Him and Florentino Perez are like two sort of dementors, aren't they? Sucking the life out of football. Pirlo's first season in charge, as we've talked about, has been quite rocky. But I think it's perhaps not as easy a job as some people were thinking going into it. So under Sarri, Juventus only won the Scudetto by 1 point, and they were outscored by 4 different teams. They have an average age, this is the Juventus side now, of 27.3. And these old reliables that they've been relying on for years to come up with the goods, Ronaldo, Chiellini, Bonucci. Ronaldo and Chiellini are both 36, and Bonucci's 33. So with every year that these guys are getting older, their output is naturally declining. Do you think that perhaps this assumption that Juventus will just be winning the Scudetto every year is one that should be challenged more, and is one that has less sort of rooting in truth now than perhaps it did 3 or 4 years ago?
I always felt that Napoli had the ability to push them quite hard despite their limitations, and I think obviously Conte gives into a completely different edge, and it sort of gives them that Scudetto winning mentality.
Yeah.
And so there is a difference there. I think that, but I still think Juventus have the best team by far in Italy. Even like you look at some of the players, it's only quite recently that Conte's been starting to play his best players. Ashley Young used to start over Perisic, and that team's 10 points ahead of Juventus. That just doesn't sit right with me. But yeah, I think Inter have quite a similar sort of like age. Conte loves his 30+ men. That's his demographic. It's not exactly we can't really do the excuse of age, because age in Italy is seen very differently to how it is here. Like we sort of look at people as soon as they hit 30 in England, the Premier League think, well, that's it, they're done. I mean, to be fair, Wayne Rooney, prime example, he's someone who's seen his finished age 29, but he could have. I think he's sort of player who could have easily adapted and played in Serie A at a very high level for another 5 years.
Yeah,
it's just that the game is played in a different way.
And as much as there are perhaps 2 or 3 examples of players being old in that squad, 27.3 is not really that old, to be honest, for
No.
the average age of a squad. In fact, it's almost a year. In fact, I think it is over a year younger than Bayern Munich's treble-winning squad from last season. So you're right; it's not much of an excuse just to say that, oh well, these players are getting old, so that's why they're performing badly.
The problem maybe is that that's their core. The
Yeah.
core's still very old, but I mean, it's probably been older in the past. A few years ago, it seemed like players like Buffon were playing still.
Yeah.
So it might
Even
have
Pirlo
actually,
himself, 5 or 6 years ago.
yeah. So they've never exactly been one for youth, but I think it's becoming more youth orientated. You've seen the likes of Weston McKennie doing quite well and others. So I think things are looking to be more youth orientated in the next couple of years.
They are, and you touch on Weston McKennie there. They also have Dejan Kulusevski, Chiesa, and De Ligt all under 23. And these are players. De Ligt's had a few injury problems this season, but Chiesa, McKennie, and Kulusevski have all racked up as many appearances as the old guard. So it is quite a nice dichotomy that you see in football a lot. The old guys, and it's in fact is incidentally what Lille do a lot of, which we'll touch on later on in the pod. But it's nice to see old players bringing through young players, and this is something I think Pirlo's definitely trying to focus on with his squad at the moment. But it's just not quite there, and that's epitomized most beautifully, I suppose, if you're in any way against Juventus by their Champions League, exit to Porto. And I know we said we weren't focusing too much on the Champions League, but talking about Juve and early Champions League exits, we can't really overlook this. So, what did you make of that game when you watched it? If you haven't watched it, then just nod your head.
No, so I didn't watch the first night. I watched the Sevilla Borussia Dortmund game.
Yeah.
So I watched extra time, and it was phenomenal. Because ironically, we're talking about age being a problem here. Pepe rolled back the years quite extraordinarily. I've never been the biggest fan of Pepe, but yeah, it's fair play to him. He's 38 now.
Yeah,
he was
a vintage
phenomenal.
Performance.
I didn't even realise we were playing with 10 minutes. It was like 20 minutes in to set the extra time because we were playing that well. But yeah, it was an absolute disaster from Juventus, and they could have won the game. I think it was Chiesa who had Chiesa who threw for maybe the hat trick, and then Pepe somehow clawed him back.
I think he hit the post as well.
He looked quite good, to be fair to him, Chiesa.
He did look good.
He might be better than his dad.
Who was his dad? You're going to have to fill me in on that one.
Oh, he's quite a famous player from the 90s.
Oh. No. My football knowledge exists of anything post 2012.
He was quite good.
Yeah.
Take my word for it.
They did look quite married to one kind of system, and I think this is a problem that they encountered under Maurizio Sarri as well. And in fact, a criticism that's been leveled at Sarri for most of his managerial career. They were so reliant on crosses into the box, primarily from Cuadrado. And once Pepe's headed away the 15th ball into the box, you'd think perhaps they'd be trying to try something else. But it's no surprise when you stick to one thing and it doesn't work, that if just continuing to stick to that one thing is presumably not going to pay the dividends that you want it to.
No, I mean, to be honest, I was still thinking throughout the time I was watching it they would score. They did have quite a lot of chances to score.
They did.
I do think there's some element of curse maybe. I think things like this happen in football, as we've all seen, but it has happened now 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
So there's some element and that's the 3 years that Cristiano Ronaldo's been at the club as well, which is quite extraordinary, I think. Or is it 3 a year? Yeah, it is 3.
Yeah, well, they beat Atleti, didn't they, in his first season?
Yeah, and that was the quarterfinals. Yeah, because the quarterfinals in 2018-19 since it's round of 16.
Yeah.
And so the next time Ronaldo's going to play in the knockout stages, if he does get there, he'll be 37. And who would have thought that when he won the Champions League last? He's 33.
And I think this is the first time in his career, perhaps, that he's failed to score in the knockout stages, having every other season provided the goods late on in the competition. It's an interesting point about Ronaldo, and I want to talk about him for a bit now. I've put in my notes, are they too reliant on Ronaldo? He's scored 23 goals in the Serie A, and the next most is Morata on 7. But as I'm reading that, I think back to how much money they spent on him. I think it was 105 million. how can you not be reliant on arguably one of the greatest players to ever play the game? So is it perhaps just understandable that he's scored 3 times as many as anybody else?
I mean, he's still a phenomenal player. But the problem is now it was a weird transfer. It didn't really make sense for him. I don't know why Real Madrid let him go. We've seen how they've suffered, but then at the same time, you don't know why Juventus committed such a fee to an aging player that didn't really fit their sort of identity. It's very hard to say no to signing Ronaldo, but I think there's been talk even today about him returning to Real Madrid, which would be quite extraordinary. I think.
Really, I haven't seen anything on that.
I think Zidane was quoted saying something along the lines of, we'll see what happens." That'd be quite interesting see if he came back to Real Madrid, but I don't think that will happen. I think. He's got one more year left on his contract next year.
I believe so. Yeah, although I don't know off the top of my head.
He's for nothing.
I mean that, and then it's surely not worth it. I mean, I don't know what kind of commercial data there is to say whether it was a viable thing, how many shirt sales and whatnot that they got from having Ronaldo there, but 105.3 million for a couple of Scudetti, is that the plural of it?
Yeah, I'm not going to try.
No, one of them. It's something. 2 Serie A's, let's say. If he may well win another one next year, or he may even win this one this year. And 2 round of 16 exits. I don't know, but he's been far and away their best player, so it's really a tricky one. He's talked in the past about how, I think I quote here, that he's happy to only play Champions League football if he could. Now, obviously, that's not financially viable, but I think it's symptomatic of his understanding of his need to play fewer games as he's not getting any younger. In fact, since his arrival in Italy, he's now playing more than ever. So there has to be some kind of future planning for a life either with an injured Ronaldo perhaps or without Ronaldo, do you feel?
Yeah, it's a tricky. Morata to me will never be a prolific goal scorer. He's offside too many times. You can guarantee the match if you watch him, he's going to be offside about 6 times. So if you do sell Ronaldo, they're going to have to replace him, and whatever you get for Ronaldo now, will it be enough to get someone of a similar? It's not even going to be of a similar ilk. It's going to have to be someone you invest in. Again, it's difficult because it's still going to cost you a lot of money to replace him, even if it's with a player that's half as good, a quarter as good. I think every sort of chairman at the minute in these top clubs are just sort of pinning their hopes on, we're going to get Haaland next year for 65 mil. Yeah, we're going to. I think so many clubs may have it in their heads they're going to get him, and it will be fine. It'll solve all our problems, and it will. One club will be that lucky team that gets him, and it will solve all their problems. But the other 9 of the best 10 teams, are going to be a real problem when they don't sign him, and they have to sort of reinvest, and they'll have to pay a lot higher fee.
And meanwhile, you've got teams like Inter and AC building without those elite megastars who are yapping at the ankles and overtaking them in some instances. But poor management of finances is something that is not unique to Juventus, but something that's definitely been a problem in recent years. So I've got here, De Ligt cost 76.95 million. Arta, who you almost forget is even there. In fact, Fabio Capello called him a rugby player in an interview the other day because he just passes sideways. And he cost 64.8 million. Ronaldo, we talked about 105.3 million, and Higuain as well, who I thought I'd throw in there for 81 million, who arguably didn't give them the kind of output from him that they would have been hoping for when he first arrived. How much do you think weight of expectation is on these players? They're arriving at the biggest club in Italy. They've come for all this money, and as you've rightly touched on before, the fans have a certain expectation of them that they have to uphold.
Well, it's sort of interesting because each of those transfers are sort of different in their own way. So De Ligt, I think when they signed him, I don't think any of us would have looked at that and said, everyone was looking and thinking, this is going to be the centre back that everyone wants, and he'll be worth every penny you spend on him. So you can't really sniff at that too much. The Arta one, it was some sort of weird way to get around the regulations on spending money. So we won't try and explain that away.
Fair enough.
Ronaldo's Ronaldo. Higuain, that's how old was he when he moved? He can't have been. He must have been 29, 30, maybe 30 going on 31. So to me was just bizarre. That is extremely poor management. He never really caught fire there either. He was always sort of, again, he's got a tendency to miss big chances, and unfortunately, fans are more likely to remember those big chances that he misses rather than some of the key goals he scored. For example, I think he scored against Monaco to help him get to the final in the Champions League in 2017. But people are probably more likely to remember his more famous misses, and there's been a few.
Yeah.
In his weird career.
It was 16-17 that he moved for 81 million. So if he's what
187, I think. So 29.
He's 33 now. So yeah, he was 29. You do have a brilliant talent for that, don't you? You just can instantly know the date, or rather the year at least, that a player was born.
Yeah, it is weird. I don't know why.
I remember many a night in first year of just picking a player, and then
that's what we did in first year.
We just recited players' birthdays, among other things. But yeah, so to be fair, you have addressed three of those players very well. But Higuain does seem like the outlier, and Arthur as well. I think, as you say, I don't know much about the politics behind that kind of signing, but
they had the better deal because they got
rid of.
Yeah,
it did. Pjanic.
Yeah, but obviously an artist. I don't think he didn't really ever want to be at Juventus. I don't think that sort of helped his motivation at all.
No, it's one of those, like, I don't know why, from his point of view, and presumably he didn't have much say in it. But going from Barcelona to Juventus, it's a very strange move. Does Pjanic even play? Do you know, at the moment for Barca?
I don't think he's first choice. He came off the bench against PSG last week. And neither of them looked particularly motivated to be at the clubs they're at, which is strange. They looked fairly motivated at their previous clubs. I'm not saying they'll. I mean, Pjanic he's born 1990, so he's 30 going on 31. He was definitely what Barcelona needed, and Arthur's just sulking in Turin. I don't think he just doesn't really fit into there because they've got quite a lot of similar sort of profile players as well in that sort of centre midfield. So again, he's not really found his home.
They're stacked. It's a lose-lose, and you don't see many of them. Perhaps Alexis Sanchez and Henrik Mkhitaryan being one of the last examples.
That's probably the winner of losers.
Yeah, very true. But we're going to wrap up this segment, I suppose, with quite an open question, and I appreciate not one that you might be able to answer off the with the knowledge that we have at the moment. But what do you think they can do in the future to sort of maybe immediate or long-term changes that would get them back to that relentless winning machine that they've been for so many years?
Sign Haaland.
Yeah.
And if you don't, well, that's
it.
Yeah, I'll write a thesis and explain how they can do it.
Yeah, just use as many vague terms as you can.
Yeah,
and then you'll have people following your every word.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
I think that's totally fair enough. I'd love for Pirlo to be the man that would drive them for future success, and there's every chance that he might be. He's a well-educated man. He's been a phenomenal footballer, although we know very well that doesn't necessarily equal a strong managerial career. And I think as well, don't move for the Super League. I don't see any plausible way in which that makes sense for a team like Juventus, because in Europe they are of course elite, but they don't have that kind of, and this is speaking more from my own personal feelings, but they don't command the kind of presence and the kind of respect or even admiration from a lot of fans outside of Italy that would make them want to tune in to Juventus playing a game unless it was in the Champions League, I think. And I don't think that kind of pedigree rolls over into the Super League, but I suppose that's a whole other debate.
Yeah, I think they are one of the biggest clubs in the. I think obviously there's been this sort of waiting towards like English clubs in a way, like people if you're 13 years old in America, you're more likely to watch the Premier League. You're probably going to say Spurs are a bigger team as Juventus, which if you said that 10 years, that's absolute madness. Absolute madness. Because Juventus they are the most successful team in Italy by far.
Yeah.
They've always had a bit of a curse in Europe. They haven't won anywhere near the amount of titles as AC Milan. They've only won 3 Champions Leagues, whereas Milan have won 7. But yeah, they are the biggest team in Italy.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's denying that they're footballing royalty. But I think if you're talking about commercial awareness and commercial success, that goes beyond just pedigree on the pitch. And if you make a fair point about 13-year-olds in America wanting to watch the Premier League more than the Italian league, I don't think that then their interest in English football then translates to want to watch Juventus play some other team in a European
that's why they
Super
want
League.
the league, so they can just play the glamorous teams. Which
yeah, I suppose.
I mean, that's why they changed their logo a couple of years ago. That was all to make them more
decision. Yeah,
that was to make them more marketable and stuff. No comments. I'll just say stuff which will get this pulled down from the internet.
From all of those watchful eyes that have been tuning
those
in.
3 watchful eyes.
Yeah. Did you see Leeds United change their badge not long ago and then had to change it instantly straight back because of the backlash that they received?
Yeah, I like backlash. Backlash is good.
Yeah.
We encourage backlash.
Well, speaking of backlash, we're looking at now a David and Goliath story in French football. But we're going to take a short break, and then after that, we'll be discussing a little look at Lille. Hello and welcome back to the Students of the Game podcast. Before the break, we were looking at Juventus, their current state, and what they can do in the future, perhaps to get back to winning ways. But now, as you're all aware, we're going to be taking a little look at Lille. Now, I wrote a post for the Formation UK, which are a sort of online sports publication, a few months ago about Lille. And when I wrote it, I was fully expecting them to have a big drop-off in form. They were a bit of fun for the first few months, and that would be that. But fast forward to the middle of March, we're recording this on the 15th, and they're still going. They're first in Ligue 1 on 63 points. They're 3 points ahead of PSG with only 9 games left, although their goal difference is a lot worse. So if they should let that 3-point lead slip, then I think that there's pretty much no chance of them getting back into it. Their top goal scorers are Jonathan David and Burak Yilmaz, both on 9 Ligue 1 goals. Do you think the point that everyone, or certainly the point that I became aware of them, was their 3-0 victory over AC Milan? And I think that was in the Europa League, if I'm right, back in October.
Yeah, I mean, so the first game I really watched in Ligue 1 was against Monaco, not yesterday.
The one yesterday, yeah.
It must have been like November, December time.
Yeah.
And I thought they're phenomenal. Burak Yilmaz, I think it was a few days after he played Celtic, and they just played phenomenal football. And even Burak Yilmaz, I thought he'd long gone. I thought he'd been finished for years. He's rolled back the years. I think it's his first time in the top 5 leagues as well. He's been playing in Turkey pretty much his whole career, and now also to come to Ligue 1, and he's not been particularly prolific, but his link-up play. I'm just judging it from that one game I watched back 3 months ago. But my God, he played well. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say he has been fairly prolific. 9 goals in 15 starts and 19 appearances overall. He's got 10 appearances less than Jonathan David, and they're on the same amount of goals. And he's overperforming his XG by 2.5. And when you're only an XG of 6.5, an overperformance by 2.5 is nothing to be sniffed at. But yeah, this guy's 35, and here he is plucked out of the Turkish obscurities, I suppose, being dropped into Ligue 1 and playing brilliantly, playing out of his mind. It's great to see.
We see it so many times, like players come from the Turkish league to like places like France, England, Germany, whatever, and it normally goes one way. Yeah. It normally ends in tears. No goals, whatever. But I think it just shows he's such a professional. He must have a lot of intelligence in his play as well to be able to adapt his game at that age and be such an asset to a team which is ahead of PSG in the league. It's quite the swan song.
It is quite the swan song, and swans are beautiful creatures. So
It's so songs.
it's right on that point as well. They have a lot of similarities, this Lille side, to Leonardo Jardim's 16-17 Monaco, who were the only team, I think, in recent years to beat PSG. And one of the main sort of comparisons to draw is, as we touched on with Juventus to some extent, that old nurturing young is very, very clear in both the Monaco side and in this Lille side. So I guess where once you had João Moutinho and Falcao nurturing the likes of Fabinho and Mbappe, now you've got players like Yilmaz and Benjamin Andre for Renato Sanchez and Jonathan David. Christophe Galtier as well, I think we want to talk about, don't we? Because he's quite an interesting guy. He has the longest serving run of any Ligue 1 manager. I think that was his 8 years in charge of St Etienne. And you have to have some kind of something special about you to get that kind of longevity in management at the moment, don't you?
Is he the current longest serving at the minute?
No, his 8 years at St Etienne, I believe, are one of the longest spells in recent memory. He by no means has the longest spell in French football, but it's an achievement in the last sort of 15 years or so that hasn't been matched by anyone really. They finished second under him in 18-19, and they look to be building on that success now, don't they?
Yes, he's a manager clearly that owns of clubs can really invest in. He shows a sort of he shows a commitment to clubs. And I think they've got quite an interesting sort of a system at Lille. I think it's very well run, as we've seen some of the players that they've been producing and selling on for massive fees. So that shows it's a club with its minds in the right place, and they're doing the right things to keep the club going and trying to compete with these powerhouses such as PSG.
Yeah. And doing a good job of it as well, by all accounts. I wanted to briefly examine their tactical setup, and I'm just going to totally rip off the content that I that I created a while ago. But their tactical consistency is fairly rigid. He's one of the last great bastions, I suppose, of the 4-4-2. And he likes to put his fullbacks tight, similar to the way Burnley play, actually. I'm just trying to shoehorn my club into to any possible way. But it is actually, in fairness, it is quite similar. So what that does when you have tight fullbacks is it means that you restrict crosses from the opposition to areas that are much deeper than they normally would. They can't get to the byline as easily. And this lends itself very well to Sven Botman and Jose Font, or is it Fonte? Either one. I was expecting you to jump in and correct me then. Yeah. Jose Font, who are both 6'4" and 6'1" respectively. And that defensive pairing has led them to concede 17 goals in 29 games. That's quite good as well, isn't it?
That's not very bad at all. Very bad. That sounded horrific. If again, Font's another one who's at quite a advanced stage. You sort of think he's sort of should be winded down in like Qatar or somewhere, but no, he's doing phenomenally well for him, and he's obviously got a very good protege in Sven Botman, who's looking worth to quite a lot of money, like so many of the recent purchases and who they've managed to transform, such as Pepe, Gabriel.
Yeah, there's a bit that we'll get onto shortly about their ability to sort of unearth these new diamonds after losing big name players. But yeah, I mean, Jose Font is 37, like another guy knocking about beforehand. Well, I say that's very harsh. He was still playing at a very high level, but consistently performing at that kind of high level. Last season, Reims, I think it is, only conceded 21 goals and they finished 6th. So they have to not just be a sort of defensive stalwart in order to win this league. And then recently they drew with Strasbourg and Brest. So their runs of their last 5 games have been, not quite what they would have wanted to try and pull as far away from PSG as possible. But PSG lost 2-1 yesterday at home to 18th place Nantes, who which gave them some serious breathing space. Similarly, like we said with Atletico Madrid last week, once again it looks like their kind of league to throw away. They do have some very tough fixtures coming up soon, which we'll touch upon. But it would just be nice, wouldn't it? Like with Inter Milan in Italy, to see a different team win the French Ligue 1.
Yes, I mean this is even if Inter win and it's good. This is bloody amazing because it's such a there's such a like difference in finance as well. It's I mean, to be honest, if it wasn't for some criminal activities last night, so PSG collapsed just in the second half after. So they're 1-0 up at half time, and then a phone call came to the dressing room to say Di Maria house been robbed.
Yeah.
It's then come out, and it's then come out that Marquinhos' house was also robbed. Family were inside at the time as well. So I think Pochettino even came out after the end of the game and said, "Look, something's more important than football." So they win 1-0, and they end up collapsing, losing 2-1. So I think I don't want to say Lille are the winners of the situation, but they certainly haven't lost as much as PSG from the events of last night.
Yeah, and obviously there's total condemnation for anything that even resembles that kind of behavior. We're going to talk a bit about their fixtures because they have a fixture on Wednesday on the 17th against PSG in the Coupe de France. And that's, I suppose, more than anything, a good precursor to their Ligue 1 fixture where they go away on the 3rd of April. It's one of those, isn't it, where you know you've got a big game coming up, a big 6-pointer perhaps in the future, and then you draw the same team either in a cup competition or you play them very soon beforehand. And it's like whoever wins that has all the momentum going into the next fixture. And there'll be certainly fireworks, you hope, for a fixture like that.
Yes, this will be the dress rehearsal. I think I look at this game and think if PSG win this cup game, they'll go and want to win the league.
Yeah.
If Lille win the cup game, they have a chance of winning the league. So I still think PSG are favourites. There's still quite a lot of games to go, and it's not a very big gap. And it's the reason why Lille's still at the top at the minute is PSG haven't been punishing them when they've slipped up in the past few weeks. This isn't like Lille aren't like at the minute a ruthless winning machine. They're winning enough games to keep ahead. But it's not quite the sort of form you need to, you still think PSG or something, it'll kick in and they'll just win a few games after game after games. Lille need to show they can do the same thing. But at the minute it's a bit too patchy.
It is a bit patchy. And as a neutral, it's one of those that you want them to even paper over those patches just to get them over the line. But obviously, reinforcing them with concrete would be the best plan for long-term success. And I suppose that brings us quite nicely, a nice little segue, talking about reinforcements, into looking at the assets that they've lost in the last 2 years alone. You talked before about Victor Osimhen, Gabriel, Nicola Pepe. They've also lost Rafael Leao, Thiago Mendes, and Yves Bissouma, who are on sort of less financial impact. But that's a combined 214.1 million sales and assets, but yet they still remain competitive. And it's about unearthing these players like Sven Botman. And that kind of business model, which I'm a huge fan of. And excellent scouting network. I think Leicester City have another example closer to home of excellent scouting networks. And replacing players who looked indispensable last season and almost getting better, don't you feel?
I think that's a very good point you make as well. So these players, quite a few of them looked like they were so crucial to Lille's success that you expect them to crumble without them. But they have shown that the collective will always be more important than any individual, no matter how much they're worth. I mean, they look a better team now without Pepe. They look a better team now without Osimhen, which again is just, and Gabriel. It just shows how well structured they are. I mean, I'd put Lille, Leicester, Dortmund, and Ajax sort of in that similar sort of category of just they're so well run. Especially in terms of scouting and stuff, they're so well run that they can just continue to sort of keep that supply chain going and make sure that the person that comes in will do just a good job as a man that left. It's a rare one. I'm surprised that like these bigger teams don't big teams show the humility to sort of look at lesser teams, quote marks, whatever you want to call them, and just have the humility to say, what are they doing? We're burning money on so much useless rubbish. Why don't we just take a step back and just see how the other half live?
Very nicely put, indeed. And I do wonder why that is a lot of the time. And we're seeing a movement towards a lot of more statistical based recruitment. And I think weirdly Steve Bruce is big on that, although you wouldn't have thought it.
He's a mastermind. I've always said it's Steve Bruce.
He's a trendsetter.
Like one of his favourite hobbies is algebra.
Is it? Or have you just made that up?
Of course it's not.
Is that a joke? See, I wanted so much to believe.
Yeah, I do as well. True. No, it's true, George. It is true.
Yeah, thank you. He looks like the type. But yeah,
if you turned up to your maths lesson as supply teacher, you wouldn't. You'd leave. You wouldn't give him the time of day. Oh,
yeah,
Steve.
Perhaps you're right.
We love you, really, Steve.
But yeah, it's weird that the bar is being set so demonstrably high by clubs, as you rightly put in quotation marks, who are lesser clubs, and yet there's not even an attempt, really, from what we can tell on the surface of things, for the huge super clubs to try and pull up to that kind of bar. And so, like Sven Botman, I've focused on primarily because I think he's one of the most exciting in this Ajax team. In this Lille team. He cost 7.2 million from young Ajax, so they're under 23s or under 21 side, and already Liverpool are sniffing about. He's very comfortable on the ball, and he's played for Holland pretty much from the age of about 15 onwards. It's not often you see a player, and I think this is testament to their recruiting. You see a player that's made next to no first team appearances, but primarily playing for the youth setup to command a fee as much as even 7 million. It doesn't happen very often, does it?
No, it's quite a weird. We've marked out Ajax and Lille as these teams we admire for their sort of the scouting and their willingness to invest in youth. So it's quite a weird. You very rarely see these sort of clubs let go such a valuable quantity.
Very
you would have thought that Ajax would have seen the value in him. So I'm not really sure the circumstance which led to him leaving, but it seems a bit bizarre because it was within like a couple of months of him being at Lille. It's like Liverpool straight away. You're getting these links every day with him, but I don't know if. I think I saw you've seen that like Football Observatory website. And it comes out the values of young players and stuff.
I haven't, no.
I think Sven Botman might have been like fourth on like the under 20s or under 21s.
Really?
Which seems absurd now because I think what was it, 7 mil? You said
7.2, yeah.
That's just fair play. They've got a nice little cash cow to collect soon.
I think they are by all accounts quite stacked in that area. Off the top of my head, they have Daley Blind, Lisandro Martinez, Edson Alvarez, Nereisho Casanvero, Per Schurz is another one they're very excited about. So perhaps it's one of them where they see 7.2 million and think, well, we can't really turn that down because we've got these other great players, first team and prospects. But it does seem weird from an outside perspective, as you say, especially because Liverpool was straight away like, right, we want him. And that they've had their own centre half issues, but
maybe it's either a case of they've been forced to sell him, or they must have something pretty good coming up.
Yeah.
Let's hope for Ajax it's the latter. I think that'd be quite nice.
History would back your point there that they can probably just replace them. Renato Sanchez has also been a revelation. He's one that had all that promise, of course, winning the Golden Boy in 2016, and then it didn't work out for him at Bayern Munich. Really, he had that awful loan spell at Swansea, didn't he? I think the highlight of it being when he passed to an advertising board, and everyone remembered that on social media, and probably will continue to remember that on social media, unfortunately. But he looks like quite the talent. I don't know how much you know about him to talk about on this pod at the moment, but I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, no, I think I've followed him since, what was it, 2015-16 season that he sort of came to the scene at Benfica. He had the build of like, for someone at 18, I mean, I think even as naturally sort of comes out every few months, always try and question the age of a player. I think he may have been one of them because he was so strong.
Yeah.
But I think he looked made for elite football because he's so skillful as well. Obviously, Bayern Munich seemed to me like a very good decision to make because they've got that mix of determination to win everything, but they've also shown openness towards youth. But obviously, it didn't work out. Swansea, that was a weird loan move because it
was very weird.
Swansea City is Swansea City. They should be not. You don't expect the Golden Boy to rock up at the Liberty Stadium, but at the same, my only thought can be they may have watched like a tape of Swansea playing 2011 to 12 and thought, "Oh, they play nice football."
Yeah.
Go there, Sanchez. And obviously, he gets there, and it's like Bob Bradley trying to manage him.
Bob Bradley, who famously had the cheapest watch in the Premier League. I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only watch which probably suits him, to be honest.
It is a sort of £40 job. I mean, that is the state of gutter journalism, isn't it? And it's only got worse since. But all the social media pages full of ranking managers' watches.
Just like this, they've made someone literally look at every manager's wrist.
Yeah.
Search online. Well, that must take like a day of someone's life to.
For sure.
You can't just look at a watch and go, "Oh, that's that one off here." You have to probably ring someone up at the club and go, "By the way, what is that? What do you know what make that is?"
A lot of cross-referencing going on to get the model.
Journalism.
That is journalism. 22 though, Renato Sanchez. So again, he's another one that's just been around for so long. And I was talking to this with my housemate yesterday, watching Martin Odegaard. Players that you are so aware of for so many years, still being so young. He perhaps might be 23. I'm not sure. On FBref, it bases it from the age they were when they began the season. So there's every chance that he's turned 23 since. But even so, 23. Is okay. Thank you for that.
I didn't want to say anything.
No, you didn't. It's very polite of you. But yeah, he's still got presumably plenty more years at the top, doing his thing, and it's great to see. Always great to see.
Do you think he'll get a move to a bigger club again, or do you think he'll think, "No, I'm going to stay here and just accept this is where I'm doing well," and that's it must be surely someone's going to think to a degree. I think bigger clubs would look at him like tainted goods, which is very unfair.
Yeah.
Because again, Lille will not give anyone away cheaply. It'll always be for a high price. And would he think, this is going very well for me here. I'm doing quite well, but there's got that yearning to sort of prove himself after what's happened in the past.
I think.
What would you do, George?
Well, that's a great question. I think that last thing you said about wanting to prove people wrong based on his chance last time, I think that's crucial, really, and it would be crucial for me because once you
shrugs his shoulder,
that'd be crucial for me. As an elite sportsman myself, I can get into that mindset. But no, I think you would, once you've sort of, I suppose, tasted of that fruit once, only for it to be rotten, then you'd want to go back and see how sweet it really was, I think. And I suppose that would be something that would weigh on my mind. I don't know off the top of my head anywhere that I could see him going to, really.
I think that Liverpool might have been linked. I say linked. Yeah. I use that word loosely. To be honest, I think if they do have to lose Gini Wijnaldum, I think he might be the most attainable sort of player of a similar sort of. I see some similarities in the way they play because they're both powerful, they're both skillful, they both work hard. I think that'd be quite an interest. I'd like to see how we did it under Jurgen Klopp.
Transfer market have him at 25.2 million, and as we know, it will always be a little higher than that to get them out. But
it's quite interesting.
You can easily see it
transfer market. So that they, the people that make those values.
Yeah. Well, I don't. They're based on. Know,
well, they're based on absolutely nothing. I think it might have been on the Athletic. I saw like an article going through it, and this guy going, "Yeah, this is just our estimates."
Is that right? It's totally arbitrary.
Yeah, there's no that's what the observatory thing. Like that's these people trying to work it out based on loads of things. But it's just some guy going, and clubs will use that when they're going into a bidding room. They'll use those figures to say, "Am I paying too much here?"
So there's just some guy out there that has like a massive influence on the football transfer market.
He doesn't even watch football.
No.
He's too busy writing down these numbers. But that might be my dream job. Just actually
plucking stuff out of your
head. And like Ed Wood was just looking at it like religiously going, "Oh no, what can I do here?" No, someone must have accidentally like, "Oh, I'd love that job."
But that's really interesting. To be fair,
hook us up.
So what's it called? The Observatory, the one that people should be using.
Yeah, well, again, it's so football fees are so subjective and like constantly changing. You can never be completely right. I think that's a more accurate. I mean, so transfer they do, but just sort of shows that even the average man can sort of work out what's a fair fee to a degree. But I do think Sanchez is worth a lot more than 25 mil. And Lille certainly won't be selling him for 25 mil.
I mean, they paid 18 million for him from Bayern Munich, so they're going to want more than a £7 million return on their investment for sure after the season that he's had and will continue to have, hopefully. Another guy that we want to talk about before we reach the end of the pod is it Mike Maignan?
Yeah, we had a bit of difficulty, didn't we?
We did. And in fact, if you could see my screen at the moment, I'm pressing listen to translate. So it's Maignan. So Mike Maignan. He's another good footballer and another young footballer. But he's their goalkeeper, for those that don't know. And he's had a pretty outstanding season. I mean, any goalkeeper that's between the sticks of a club that's conceded the least in the league he's done stuff pretty well. But he's overperformed his expected goals against, which is at 19.2. He's only conceded 17. But what I thought was really interesting is that his expected goals against only 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I apologize, was 53, and now it's 19.2. I mean, a lot of that is to do with the quality of the defense in front of him. But how much of that defense is built on the knowledge that the man behind you can save it if he needs to?
Yeah, he's a very solid keeper. I think he's the man that looks most likely to take the shirt away from Hugo Lloris in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Who knows, maybe after this year, Lloris will hang up his international boots and it will be Mike Maignan we're watching in the famed French jersey. I think he's the only one, to be honest, that's looking. There's Lafont, I think he's at Nantes at the minute.
He's quite young. Leeds, but he's also very young.
Meslier, yeah. Is Meslier just been called up to the...
I don't know. But they have been. The under-21s have been announced today, haven't they? I'm not sure if they.
I'm just going to casually search this while you talk.
Yeah, but no, he's very promising, and we on the Students of the Game pod love youth, and that the younger could be interpreted very wrongly. But in the context of, in fact, now we talk about it. Did you see the hilarious thing that Manchester United put up? It was when they had that teenager come off the bench and play.
Diallo. Even younger.
I think it was the guy that was even younger. And they just got the wording completely wrong. So they said, like, if you're old enough, you're good enough, rather than if you're good enough, you're old enough. And it is so funny. And
it's still up.
I think they must have taken it down. But yeah, if you're old enough, you're good enough. They're that desperate for talent. So he's been a fantastic goalkeeper, and I think you perhaps wanted to say one or two things about Jonathan David. Just that I think you like him quite a lot, don't you?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of love for Jonathan David. I think he had a rough start. We can all agree, but there's a lot of qualities in his game which can. I think we'll just see him get more and more prolific. I think the goals will come. I think. What was doing? I think he had it took a long time to score his first goal. I think for the club.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
and. It hasn't exactly been prolific since, but it has been a clear improvement. And there's been other parts of his game which look really impressive. And I think he'll be something a lot of the biggest clubs in Europe we're looking at, especially, again, as we mentioned, that Haaland's a man everyone wants, but not all of them will get him. So I think Jonathan David will be one of the next on line to the super club throne.
Well, I do hope so, because he does look like quite the talent. And it's nice to see as well when players don't have that initial kind of bounce that you want them to when they arrive at a new club. I mean, Brendan Rodgers would be proud of the character that he's shown from not doing so well to then establishing himself as starting lineup.
He could be replacing Vardy in a year or two. Who knows?
He could be.
Under Brendan's tutelage.
Although after Iheanacho's hat trick, hopefully he might take the 9 jersey. Although I don't think he played. In fact, I won't get into this. I was going to say I don't think he plays his best football as an out and out 9, Iheanacho.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right.
We go away on far too many tangents, so that's something for another day. So we've already said that they're playing PSG in the next 2 days, and then again on the 3rd of April. They still have to go away to Lyon on the 25th of April, who are third, level on points with PSG. So by no means an easy run in to the title. If you had some advice for Lille, what would you tell them now?
Be true to yourself and never give up.
What a way to end the pod, I think. Do you have anything else that you want to say? Any pressing things about Lille?
Yeah, just cut that last bit out.
Yeah, I will. It's going to the edit. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to the Students of the Game podcast, edition number 3. We're going to be doing a UCL roundup next week, so make sure you tune in to hear about all things Champions League. And apart from that, I've been George Pitches. Max, you have been yourself, as always, your wonderful self.
Have I?
Yeah.
Good to hear.
And thank you very much for watching the Students of the Game podcast.